It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Happy Thursday to you. I know the week's moving on pretty quickly. Having a New Year holiday on Monday, hopefully having most of that time off. Now you get to enjoy the early week, the short week, and you see the light at the end of the tunnel coming up for a weekend that you need, that you enjoy, and that you deserve after a week that it's been. I know it's been one of the crazier weeks with everybody at work trying to recap last year, trying to get ready for this year, trying to set the tone, trying to actually get ahead, and actually trying to get at least caught up after the holiday break and after, the paperwork you have to do for fourth quarter and all that good jazz. So nonetheless, let's get you started off the right way, the proper way, an excited way. And that way you can carpe diem all over this place. Good morning to you. Welcome into it. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It is an honor to have you along here with us. 8 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK if you want to join into the program. And we're going to talk about it later in the show. But last night was a lot of fun here in the Wichita area for the South Central Kansas Delegation Forum for the legislative session beginning next week. And all of our legislators, House members, Senate members ended up showing up at the courthouse. And we get a public forum to discuss what issues are important to you and I, the voters. We'll talk about that now, number two, and it was a lot of fun. It was the first time, I do have to say, that I've ever been booed in my life, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. So it was kind of entertaining. I take that back. I was booed a couple of times when I tried to sing back in the day when I thought I had a good singing voice, which was, I guess some people enjoyed it, but others, never mind. So I guess it's the second time I've been booed. Well, that's all right. I was very concerned, and one of the comments that I made about it was, as we go into the new legislative session, are taxes. Just to remind all of you, even on the western part of the state, if you're in Garden City, if you're down in Liberal, if you're even outside of Kansas just a little bit, you're down in Oklahoma or in the peak of Texas, and you hear some of this, Kansans are going to be owing taxes, massive amounts of taxes, when we file our taxes in April. We're going to owe the state of Kansas. That's just, there's no getting around it. They passed the retroactive tax increase in July that said that even though we didn't have that tax rate from January to July, we still are responsible for that same tax rate. So when we file, we're going to owe the difference on that. Plus, 4 days ago now, I think we should do the countdown and continuously remind everyone that as of 4 days ago now, we had more taxes taken out of our paycheck every day for the state. And I made the comment of, thank God for President Trump's tax cuts last week. And a lot of people did not like that, apparently. So it was a lot of fun being there. We'll talk about it again a little bit later. But as we talk about taxes, I'm curious to see, there's been a story that popped up, and I know everybody out on the western part of the state and outside of the city and all the agriculture individuals and all the farmers will enjoy this conversation. But the tax cuts, one argument that came about was the tax cuts that President Trump did last week, could it potentially harm the farm bill? I don't know why it would want to harm the farm bill. I don't see the reason for it to have to harm the farm bill, but there is a scare tactic out there that says it's going to affect the farm bill, and some conservatives and Republicans are now getting a little sketchy on whether it's going to harm farm subsidies that are usually involved with the farm bill because of the tax cuts, because of less money coming into the state, less money that's coming into the federal government, the less money that's coming in by tax revenue, which means they're going to start finding ways to cut. Now, cutting is good, and I'm all for cutting government and cutting spending and cutting programs, but we need to look at what we're actually going to be cutting. In the Farm Bill, if you remember, the majority of the Farm Bill, which is why some politicians and some individuals have left office and are no longer in there, because this was the scare tactic that was used against them in the 1st Congressional District. But And nothing against Roger Marshall in any way, shape, or form, but Tim Huelskamp got a lot of heat for the way he voted on different farm bills and different spending bills for agriculture and got kicked off the ag committees. Why? Because the majority of the Department of Agriculture, for whatever reason, 60-80% of that department and the spending in that department does not go towards farmers. Why in the world would we have a department like the Department of Agriculture, and we would have different programs for farmers and farm subsidies and being able to actually help out farmers and being able to give them breaks and being able to take care of the farmers, which is what we have to do, and I am all for that, and that's exactly what it needs to be, because they are the lifeline of the country, of the world. They are the bread and butter, literally. They make the bread, they make the butter, they make the meat, they make the cheese, they make the eggs, everything that you buy in the store that comes from the farm. And many of them happening right here in the Mid-America region, in Kansas, in Oklahoma, in Texas. All you farmers that are out there right now waking up and getting ready to take care of your livestock, getting ready to think about what you're going to do for the day. All of you are why we get to eat every single day. So we have a Department of Agriculture. Great. That's what it's supposed to be there for, is to take care of you, but it doesn't. What it does, predominantly, is it takes care of food subsidies, the food stamp program, the WIC program, all of these social programs that should not be involved, in my opinion, in the Department of Agriculture and in farm bills. Now we're going to look at a farm bill after a major tax cut that the President Trump and the Republicans ended up passing. We're going to look at a farm bill, and we're going to start looking at cuts on how we can start cutting within the federal government. Now, if we're going to cut social programs, all the power to you. Let's start cutting social programs. Let's start getting more money back in the paychecks of everybody, so when they come home, they're bringing home more, which means they can start paying off debt, and they can take care of their families, and they can reinvest in themselves, and they can upgrade their vehicles, and they can upgrade their homes, and they can upgrade whatever they need to in order to live properly. They don't need the social programs by then. Or the way the Democrats look at it is that they see the opportunity to start cutting other things while we increase the social program, which I don't know if you remember or not, and we try and rail on this every single day almost, but social programs consist of 60% of our entire state budget. 60. Now that includes Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps and WIC and to every one of these programs. Every one of these programs that you get if you're a citizen or a non-citizen coming in temporarily, if you are below a certain wage level, if you are disabled, if you are elderly, and I'm not trying to take it away from the elderly or the disabled in any way, shape, or form, but that is not 50% of our population. So why are 50% of our population on food stamps and Medicare and Medicaid and all these different programs? Why? It should be 10% of the population. And if it was 10% of the population, then fine, we can handle that financially. We can do that. But it's not. 48% of the population's on food stamps. Why? Oh, they live below the poverty level. Really? Give me a break. So what are we going to cut? It's up to Congress. They get to decide. They have the power of the purse. They're the ones that decide where the money goes. But you know what they're going to say? They're going to come out and make their statement saying, well, it's just necessary because it's really tight and the budget's tight now. We're going to have a $1.5 trillion budget deficit now because we ended up cutting the taxes, and it's going to be a terrible ordeal, and we're not going to be able to afford this. We're not going to be able to afford that. So sorry, farm subsidies, you're going out the window because for whatever reason, just like any type of government shutdown, when they have to trim the fat off, when they have to consolidate, when they have to free some of their spending, they make it as harmful, as hurtful, and as painful as they can possibly make it on what is really necessary in this country. They don't take it away and start consolidating from their own fat at the federal level. They take it away from what we need as essentials here. So yeah, there's a story. Tax cuts may come back to bite farm subsidies. The second largest U.S. farm group says the mammoth tax cuts now pending in Congress could force cuts in farm subsidies or possibly wipe them out altogether because of the pay-as-you-go law. according to the National Farmers Union President Roger Johnson. Farm groups generally hail the prospect of lower tax rates, elimination of the estate tax on a great reduction in its bite, larger and more immediate deductions for purchases and business expenses, and continued use of cash accounting, a simple approach for record income and expense that allows taxpayers to manage their cash flow, limit liability. The analysis shows that tax cuts would trigger automatic cuts in federal spending to prevent runaway deficits. Automatic spending cuts. Automatic cuts. Now, what are they going to be on? It should be on social programs. It should be on Medicare and Medicaid. It should be on Social Security. It should be on maybe some of the fat that's already just the bureaucrats. Maybe they could actually, get rid of some of their administrators. Maybe they could, consolidate some of their departments and agencies. Maybe they could free some of it. Maybe they could deregulate some, but they're not going to do that because that's not what they like to do. They're going to turn around and they're going to say, automatic cuts in spending. What are we going to do? We're going to stiff it to the farmers. What was the annual salaries that farmers used to make, 5-6 years ago? $150,000 net after everything as a profit. $150,000. It was a business. You're a business when you go out and you take care of your livestock every day. Not only are you feeding the world, but it's also a business so you can actually take care of your family and you can keep the family farm in the family when you pass on and the next generation wants to take it up. That's how it's supposed to be done. How is it done now? You know what? $4,000 profit at the end of the year. If you can be lucky, if you consolidated some of the stuff, if you got some help from somebody else and you kept wages low and you didn't have to hire a whole lot of people, $4,000. Can you live on $4,000? I don't think so. Stiff it to the farmers. Get rid of their farm subsidies because, you wanted to lower your taxes, so now you can fend for yourself. Are you kidding me?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a pre-Friday celebration. That's what it's all about, baby. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK if you want to join into the program. I gotta laugh at the report from the Mid-America Ag Network with Craig Mead. There was the story that he did during the beginning of the break, if you heard that. And as they talk about, should we regulate the smell of marijuana the same way that we regulate the smell of livestock? That's fantastic. The fact that we're talking about whether we're going to regulate the smell of marijuana in some areas where they're allowed to grow it at the same time as livestock, let me just tell you, marijuana smells worse than any livestock that you can have. And I'm talking about any kind of livestock. My in-laws have goats. Trying to clean out a goat stall. Terrible. Horses aren't bad. Cattle, it depends on how many you have. Chickens are terrible. With the straw in there and then with everything. It's terrible. Yeah. Regulate the smell of that, but are you kidding me? Pot smells 10 times worse. Are you kidding me? And the fact that we just are even having that conversation I find quite comical. Should we regulate the smell of marijuana? Yes. Yes, we probably should. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Kind of an interesting one. That was a topic, by the way, that was brought up. You know it's going to be brought back into the legislative discussion for the state this year of trying to legalize marijuana, as they've tried to do for a long time. We can have that discussion again. I guess we haven't had it in a while. And a lot of advocates for it. Now, I did hear a couple that were actually legit arguments to be able to legalize it. I still don't agree with it personally, but at least I heard a couple legitimate arguments. The other ones were just, hey, man, let me smoke my thing, and whatever. Get out of here. Get out of here. But I did hear some at least substantial discussions for it, and at least a couple actually good arguments to be able to. I still disagree. I think it's a conversation we need to have again, especially during the the upcoming legislative session that's about to happen. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, I did not get a chance to play it yesterday, but on Tuesday we did interview one of the Kansas gubernatorial candidates for the Republican side, high schooler Dominic Scavuzzo. We're going to play that interview at the bottom of the hour in just a few minutes. So excited to play that for you, so that way you can have an opportunity to hear. Let's go to the phones, though, shall we? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Eric, how are you today?
I am great, sir. How are you?
Fine. Got a little cough.
Oh, well, hang in there. I tell you what, man, the cold this year, well, with the chilly weather, but just the flu season and the cold, they said the peak was happening probably this week, and it has been brutal. I'm finally just getting over my congestion and my cough because it's been driving me nuts for the last month.
Yeah, that's true. It's the first time I've talked today, so you know how it starts getting going, and you've been going a half hour.
Yeah, got to clear it out a little bit. What's on your mind?
Come on, quit drinking the Kool-Aid on the marijuana. Industrial marijuana would make this state incredibly rich because of the quality of things we can make out of it. Clothing, concrete, and all that. You need to quit drinking that Kool-Aid, man.
Now, look,
it's a good crop. If you don't even want to smoke it, that's fine. I don't care. But that's an incredible crop. The fibers in it for use and everything. We need to get over this.
Well, now we're talking. Well, hold on. Now we're talking about two different things because the hemp, the agricultural hemp that can be grown that has no THC level in it whatsoever, I'm absolutely for that. So you're right. We can make concrete, we can make rope, we can make different products out of it. I'm all for the agricultural hemp that has zero THC. You can smoke an entire field of it, and all it'll do is give you a really bad headache because there's no THC. I'm for that. I know that there's definitely benefits for the agricultural side of growing that. I'm not for the recreational smoking and even for most of the medicinal smoking of the actual THC marijuana. That's what I'm against.
But they both still smell. I'm sorry. We've had that industrial hemp or ditch weed in this state forever. It doesn't smell worse than big.
Well, I mean, growing it, you're right. I mean, there's a smell to it, but it's not as bad. Yeah, there's not as much of a smell to the livestock, but into the agricultural side is the livestock stuff. But the smoking of it, just the people that are out smoking. I mean, I came from Colorado. You see people smoking it all the time out in public. I worked in customer service, and they'd walk up and they reek of it, and I get a secondhand high just by trying to deal with some of these people. And that stuff reeks so bad, it turns my stomach. And to me, the smell of people smoking marijuana is worse than any type of livestock manure you could have.
But we're talking about growing it, not smoking it.
Yeah, and if we're talking about the growing of the agricultural hemp, I'm with you. I'm all for that. I see the definite need for it, for the revenue, for the benefit for the farmers. I know that it actually puts oxygen back into the soils to help them, or the nitrogen or whatever they actually need to grow. It actually helps enrich the soil again. We have benefits of it for actually utilizing it. I'm all for that stuff. I'm just not for the smoking aspect of it with the THC levels.
I would say not against the smoking, but still growing pot being grown. So have a good one, Andy.
Hey, I appreciate the call, Eric. Yeah, hey, I appreciate the phone call very much, Eric. I appreciate that. Good morning to you. 721-8255-721-TALK. And it's a conversation we need to have, but we do need to because the hemp, remember last year during the legislative session, the individuals that were advocating for the legalization of hemp, that conversation, the hemp that's grown agriculturally, totally different than the marijuana that's smoked with the THC levels. Totally different. It's not on the same level. And if we're going to legalize agricultural hemp, we need to show that distinction just because of the fact that if they do try and link it in with the recreational or medicinal marijuana, then it's not going to pass and we're not going to see the benefits of that. We need to separate the two. Non-THC agricultural hemp that's grown in the fields by the farmers for production, and then the smoking stuff or the creams or whatever else you want to put on there for the medicinal or recreational side with THC levels. Two totally separate things, and we have to show those distinctions in order for us to actually see the benefits from the agricultural side. Back after this, stay here.
Giving the libs one dose of sanity at a time.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Good Thursday morning to you, the pre-Friday celebration. Eric, I appreciate the call. I love it, my friend. I love the conversation, and I want to continue it here in just a bit. When it comes to the agricultural hemp / marijuana, I would even say that, again, and I'm not for the smoking of the recreational medicinal marijuana. I just don't support it. I don't like it. I saw what it did in Colorado, and I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people are, and that's totally cool. I am in favor of the agricultural hemp that has 0 THC levels in it. You can't get high off it. You grow it, and then you use it for industrial hemp. You use it for concrete, use it for ropes, use it for whatever you want to. I'm totally for that. I see the huge benefits for that. It helps the farmers. It helps the soil. It helps our industries. It helps the environment. It helps all this. I'm totally for it. I would say that if you are advocating both of them, and I don't want to spend too much time on this before we get to the interview, but I will say that if you are advocating and supporting of both the growing and of the smoking side, then do it in baby steps. Do it in the baby steps, because the way that we talk about as conservatives, the way that we need to learn to start getting things done, the way the progressives have been doing for a long time, is doing it in the baby steps, little by little by little. Get the agricultural hemp legalized first. Get it growing. Show that it's not a THC factor. Show that it's not something that is harmful to the farmers or to the environment or to whatever. Do that, and then start working on the medicinal, and then start working on the recreational. Do it in baby steps. I personally don't advocate for that or don't support it, but at the same time, you're going to get your look. It's the slippery slope. There's always a slippery slope argument, and that's why I'm not been in favor of the medicinal side, because you legalize medicinal marijuana, then it's just going to open up the door for the recreational, because that's the way it works. But even to take it another step, if you have to legalize the agricultural hemp and then go to the medicinal and then go to the recreational, and then you'll still get your agenda. It may take a little bit longer, but you'll at least get your agenda across. There, I'm helping you, even with something that I don't personally agree with. But let's have the conversation on it, shall we? 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. I want to get to the interview. We interviewed him on Tuesday. I have not had a chance to play it for you, but I want everybody in the state to be able to hear it as much as possible. He is one of the high school students that is running for the governor's race in 2018. He is a Republican. He is up from the from the Kansas City area. He is Dominic Scavuzzo. He sat down with us and chatted with us on Tuesday right here on the Voice of Reason. He is Dominic Scavuzzo on the line with us. Dominic, good morning to you, my friend.
Morning, how are you?
Doing great. It's an honor to have you on here. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's to you. What a year it was last year, and what a year it's going to be this year with the election. How do you feel?
I think this is a very key election to our state. You look as well as in the nation, because of the recent Virginia and Alabama races leaning Democratic. I think this is a race that we need to make sure leans Republican.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about your past, your history. You are in high school. Talk about what got you to the point to where you want to run for the governor for the state of Kansas.
Well, I've been interested in politics my entire life, and over the past year, my political views have definitely been strengthened. I went to the inauguration of President Trump in January. I went to Kansas Boys State in Manhattan, Kansas over the summer, which is the political leadership camp. And while we were at that camp, me and a bunch of high school students were looking for ways to get involved with politics, because we saw that we wanted to get involved. And upon looking what we could do, we found that you can in fact run for governor. So I started to think about it a little more, and I realized the opportunity that was very rare, as I saw this as a possible career in the future as well. So I jumped on it.
Sure. It is definitely very rare. And I know it's got a lot of media attention because there's 4 or 5 different high school students from the Republican and Democrat side altogether, which is very interesting for an election. What's the response that you've gotten from your peers, from your parents, from your neighbors and friends? What do they think when you say, hey, I'm a high school student, but I'm running for the governor of Kansas?
They've all been very supportive. At first there's a couple laughs, and then they go, well, go for it. Our politics are kind of crazy right now, so really anything can happen is really what they say, but they've been very supportive.
Well, we are in a time to where unique things happen in politics, hence the election of Donald Trump. So you're right. Yeah. I mean, we can't count the eggs until they're hatched sort of thing, and bringing new, fresh light. It's encouraging to see, to me, the high school students, which I'm a millennial, I'm a younger individual myself, and to be able to see younger kids get engaged in politics is really encouraging to see and to be able to view. So I thank you guys and all the other high school students that are in running, because it's getting the young generation engaged again. Now I have to ask, well, first off, what school do you go to?
Rockhurst High School in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay, very good. So you're up in Kansas City. the layout and some of the other students that you're around that you see, the young generation, what's the feel? Because we see in the media all the time that they're nothing but the left-wing progressive Bernie Sanders-ite socialists who want the free college and the free goodies, and they want this and that and the other. Is that what you're seeing when you walk down the hallways, when you talk to other students, when you talk to other politically engaged students?
No. Okay, so, well, when you walk through the halls, first of all, there's not much talk about politics, which is a large reason why I wanted to run, to increase that talk. People now want to ask me what's going on with the election, who's running, what are their platforms. But they're quiet. And I think that by me running, Bernie Sanders was what got all the young Democrats excited. But I think all the high school students are getting the young Republicans excited and coming out and saying, being stronger about their platforms and really just becoming more conservative young students.
Sure. No, it's good to hear. It's good that especially you guys are beginning to grow something that I don't think the progressives are actually prepared for. Talk about your platform a little bit. We've heard a different plethora of ideas for the state between the tax rates, between education, between this, that, and the other. But overall, your platform, what do you want to see in Kansas if you end up becoming governor of Kansas in 2018?
The biggest part of my platform is definitely the idea of transparency. Right now, we have one of the most secretive governments in the nation. There's been Star articles about it, Wichita Eagle articles about it. And this goes back to, I think, there was a bill offered by Stephanie Clayton out of Overland Park, which said if we're voting on a bill 48 hours before if it's budget, they put it online so the citizens can read it, in 24 hours if it's just a regular bill. I think this is great because it allows the citizens to reach their representatives and truly know what's going on in Topeka. When I did a speech at Lawrence Free State High School, I said, raise your hand if you know what they're voting on in Topeka this week. And no one raised their hand. No one knows what's going on. So I think by doing this, we can cut out reckless spending that our state has, cut out programs that we don't really need. And this can raise money for things like education that is being debated whether we need to raise money for.
Talk about small business in the state and in your sites. I mean, coming from Kansas City, I'm sure you see a lot of businesses, small businesses. I don't know how much you have experience or history with agriculture and the farming, but talk about it's been a struggle. The businesses have not grown. The economy has not grown the way it needs to with the tax cuts that Governor Brownback did in 2012. Possibly or probably could have done a lot better if we actually saw GDP growth. The economy kind of tanked at the same time, and we didn't see that growth. What can we do to embolden and make the small businesses start growing again in the state?
Both my parents are small business owners. My mom owns a yogurt shop, and my dad owns a meat company. And, they always tell me that the tax rates need to change. That's the biggest thing for them to operate. So when I look at, the White House and what's going on with Trump and the tax reform, I think that is something that we could start to apply to our state. Not necessarily the Brownback tax cuts, but lean more towards making sure everyone benefits from these tax cuts.
Well, that's what we need to do. We need to see it all across the board for everybody. Talking about the tax cuts, your thoughts on the Brownback tax plan. Did you think it was good, or when we came into the session last year when they did repeal it, did you see the need for the repeal? What's your take on the whole tax rates in the state?
Yes. I will say, I at the beginning when he was first proposed, I thought it could work. However, when it did not go as planned, I think there was a need to repeal it simply because when you go around our country, Kansas is not really highly respected because of this. And I think that's a reputation that we need to change. I think if we kept it in, it may have eventually worked itself out, but I don't think it would have been able to stay in there long enough for the people to realize that.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about education for a minute. You're seeing it firsthand with the public education system, and as you know, the Supreme Court demanding that it's not quite funded the way it needs to be. Some on the progressive side say that we need the additional $600 million. We already increased it $200 million over the next couple of years for our public system. We increase it every year. Do we need more money into it? Do we need to stop the Supreme Court? What's your take on this whole debacle?
Well, like I said, transparency. I don't believe we need to raise it anymore. I think we just need to go back into our budget and go through it step by step and see where we can raise money, cut money. Like the programs we have that can be deemed unnecessary, and transparency that cuts out reckless spending. We should be able to raise enough money and just figure out a school equation that works better than what we currently have. Right now, it's median income factored in with the population of students in the school district. We need to find a way to fix that equation because right now some school districts are getting too much money, other ones are not getting enough. There just needs to be a good balance.
Sure. Going into this session, we start the new legislative session Monday next week already, which is hard to believe it's kicking off that quickly. But what would you like to see out of this? Whether it is the education debate, and the Republicans have said that they may potentially propose an amendment when it comes to education finance and limiting the Supreme Court, when it comes to some of the spending or maybe potentially cutting some of the budget. If you were governor right now and you were watching them go into the session after what we saw last year, what would you like to see at the end of it to say this was a successful legislature?
The first thing first, we need to go through and just literally work everything out in the budget, because right now, like I said, the reputation of our state's not that great. And I think if we can just go through, cut out those programs, raise money. But at the end of the session, what I would like to see is a school program that is functioning where everyone can be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they look back and they say that is the correct budget. Because right now, obviously, education is the biggest problem in Kansas.
It really is. We got a lot of problems with that. Yeah. I have to ask, a message from social media wanted me to ask you this question, but when it comes to some of the social issues, for instance, the legalization of marijuana or the banning of, what's your platform, what's your take on some of the social issues that we've seen starting to pop up in the state?
Personally, I believe that right now, medical marijuana is as far as our state should go.
Okay. It seems like there's a lot of support for that all across the board, regardless of political affiliation, for sure. We're talking with Dominic Scavuzzo, candidate for the Republican gubernatorial race 2018. If people want to get a hold of you, if they want to reach out, if they want to contribute, donate, if they want to help with your campaign, how can they get in touch with you?
I'm currently putting together my website, but my Twitter page is @Scavuzzo4Gov.
There we go. That was Dominic Scavuzzo. We chatted with him on the show on Tuesday. Had to get that out there for you. That way everybody in the state, as many people as we can hear that as we get into the gubernatorial race 2018, talking about the candidates for governor and what they stand for. Another one of the high school students. It's going to be very difficult for a high school student to get the nomination, to get the funding, to get the campaigning going, but at least it's encouraging to see the activism from the young generation. That's what I'm more excited about than anything else. That is really encouraging to see. One more break, wrapping up hour number one. Your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network, wrapping up hour number one, and I'd love to hear from you. Had a few phone callers hanging out during the break, but didn't stick around for it. Would love to hear from you if you want to call back in. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, shoot me a message, by the way, all over social media on the Voice of Reason page, KQAM page on Facebook, the Facebook live feed that's rolling. A lot of people checking it out this morning, which good morning to you and welcome aboard. Shoot me a message over Twitter @Hoosier Reason as well. Thanks again to Dominic Scavuzzo coming on. We have a few more of the Republican candidates to chat with on the show for the gubernatorial race, and then we'll start getting into what Democrats we can. Now, I will say that yesterday, and I've been very critical of him on the air, but just policy-wise on what he stands for, which is he's a Democrat. He's going to disagree. I met with yesterday at the Delegation Forum House Minority Leader Jim Ward, and who's one of the big leaders for the Democrats and running for governor for the state of Kansas on the Democrat side. And I chatted with him after the deal, and we're going to try and get him on the program. And we'll do a little sparring, have a little fun. We'll keep it civil, obviously, because that's just what we do. We know that we're going into it with different ideals, but we want to discuss it. Let's start the banter. Let's start the discussion. Let's start the dialogue. That's what it's all about. So we'll try and get Jim Ward on the show here soon, in the next couple of weeks during the legislative session, to get an update from what's going on there, along with some of his ideas, because I'm very concerned of what's happening in the state. We raised our taxes twice already in the last 6 months. They potentially are going to have to raise taxes again, because everything that's the major issues in this legislative session this year are budgetary. The major things that are going to be happening in this session this year are going to be financial. It's going to be extremely expensive for us to advocate what they're advocating for and for us to actually implement that. Medicaid expansion Every state that's expanded their Medicaid program has seen expenses for their state. Not money coming in from the federal government, because that's totally different, but expenses for the state specifically, upwards of $2 billion. Additional from what they're already spending. We cannot afford that. We're about to be thrown into a constitutional crisis just by trying to increase educational spending by $600 million. And we're talking $1 billion to $2 billion just in Medicaid expansion. Where are we going to get that kind of money? That's the first question. Where are we going to? Well, we're going to raise your taxes. Really? So the people that are already struggling on the brink, that are already suffering from Obamacare, that can't afford their medical expenses right now, that can't afford the highest sales tax in the country on their groceries, that can't afford to live on a daily basis, they're already on the brink. They're already struggling. They're already suffering. They're already trying just to make it day by day by day. You're going to raise their taxes and say, you know what, just give up, give us more of your money, and then we'll take care of you with a government program. That's what you're saying? That we're too weak to take care of ourselves? That we're too weak to do it ourselves? Instead of saying, you know what, here's as much of your money as we can possibly give you. We still need a little bit of it, and we're very grateful for the little bit that you do give us through your taxes for us to do the basic necessities of what government has to do. We'll limit our government spending. We'll limit our government agencies. We'll limit our government programs. We're going to do the bare minimum, and the rest of it, let's give you as much of your money as you possibly can. We're going to start cutting your property tax. We're going to start cutting your income tax. We're going to start cutting your sales tax. We're going to start cutting your gas tax. We're going to start cutting whatever we can and trim it down to the bare minimums. Give you as much money as you possibly can, and then it's up to you. You have the money. You can get back on track. You can take care of your family. You can get proper insurance. You don't need to be on the government insurance because you'll be able to afford your own insurance. Let's repeal Obamacare. Let's drop down the prices based on a private market. Let's start getting some insurance companies to come in and start competing in a market, because then the quality goes up, the prices go down, and then we can afford it. So that way, when you go to the emergency room, you're not stuck with a $1,500, $2,000 bill. When you need to go see a specialist, you don't have your insurance saying, we don't cover that because we don't qualify that as a necessity. We don't have to go to the doctor and say, you know what, I'm low on this, I'm low on that, and I got to do a blood draw. Well, you have to do 2 blood draws because the insurance won't cover it unless we really prove it based on 2 verifications of the blood draw, and then maybe they'll start covering it. But then the medication, it depends on what medication you get, because the medication may not be covered through your insurance because Obamacare doesn't deem it necessary as something that they should have to cover. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's what we're advocating, to expand in our state and make it more expensive so more people have to pay for it with higher taxes, and then we get less coverage with less quality? I don't think so. It's a stupid idea. Let me say it again. It is a stupid idea. This is the Voice of Reason.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration has officially begun. We can carpe diem all over this place. We can enjoy. We can work hard so that way we can party hard. Or in my case, I just like to sleep hard. Let me tell you, it's fun. I love, this is what I love to do every single day. This is my bread and butter, baby. This is what I enjoy so much. But, just the week, I mean, you work every day, you get tired, you get exhausted. My weekends now, and I must be getting old, I have a 3-year-old daughter that just wears us out. Wears my wife and I both out. She's just nonstop. Go, go, go. She never knows how to sit down or sit still. We try to watch a movie. She'll sit there for 30 seconds. Then she's got to be coloring while she watches the movie. Then she's got to be getting out her toys while she watches the movie. And then she's got to be running around playing ball while she watches the movie. And then she's got to lay down while she watches the movie. And it's just go, 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 go. Does not know how to sit down. Always running. So our goal during the weekend is to see how much we can keep her entertained with her toys and occupied while we actually get to relax a little bit. So that's the goal for this weekend. So we get to work hard. Some say to party hard. I'm a little old for that now. Now we get to work hard to rest hard while we're there for the weekend. But welcome into it. Hour number 2 of The Voice Reason right here. 721-8255-721-TALK. It's an honor to have you along this morning. Last night, coming up in hour number 3, we're going to have State Representative John Whitmer on the show to recap an event that happened last night. It was a fun event. It was entertaining, interesting for sure. I would have liked to have seen more Republicans and conservatives show up to it because the Democrats and the progressives showed up in large numbers. I knew that they were going to in the first place, but they had a rally, actually, a protest outside of the courthouse last night with their signs and their chanting. It's too cold. I got to give them credit. They're dedicated. It's cold to do something like that, but they went out and they protested, and then they all came in during the Delegation Public Forum for South Central Kansas. And everybody gets to make a statement. Everybody gets to make a comment, and they were there to advocate for the expansion of Medicaid. Now, as I mentioned in the end of last hour, that to me, that is the most absurd idea that we could possibly have, because I do not see the benefit of expanding a government program that has driven more people's health care costs out of this world to cover less, to have the government be extremely inefficient in what they're doing. It's like going to the DMV, trying to get your health care. And then at the same time, the same ones that are saying CanCare is terrible because Lieutenant Governor Collier ended up privatizing it with CanCare, now CanCare 2.0, with trying to change it, and all the backlogs and how many people are waiting to get coverage and how bad of a program it is. But let's go ahead and expand it because we need government health care. I have a really hard time understanding the thought process there. And everybody got up to 2 minutes to be able to speak last night. And I showed up, and I did see some other conservatives. It was really great to see some Republicans there. And the majority of, obviously, we're in a red area for the most part. The majority of the legislators up there were Republican. But one after another, after another, after another, after another, they all came up, and their big agenda was to expand Medicaid. Now, there were a few other issues on there, as we mentioned before, the talk about legalizing marijuana or legalizing the agricultural hemp, which there is a difference, and we'll get into that a little bit later, too, if we want to. But they were advocating for that. One, I don't even know where they were coming from, but we're talking about the work hazards of a call center. I don't know. Maybe there's a threat or an issue there. I'm not quite sure. But the work hazards and the stress-related work hazards in relation to a call center. So I don't know what they're talking about there. Maybe we can get some clarification from State Rep John Whitmer when he comes on in the 8 o'clock hour, because I don't know what that one was all about. Then they had some other issues about the slot machines in the lottery and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of interesting, but they were all predominantly for advocating for more education funding. There were a few different school board members that were attending yesterday, talking about the need to take care of our children. And just think about the children. Just think of the children. It's all about the children. We got to take care of the children. We need more money and more funding for education. And just think of the children. Think of the ones, and we had an individual who was previously incarcerated, trying to get his life back on track. And fantastic that I'm so glad that he did. And individuals that were there that were poor or didn't have a job or lost their job, or some disabled individuals in the family, or some elderly individuals in the family, and why we need to expand Medicaid so that way these people can get proper care. And someone who's filing medical bankruptcy because they had to go to the emergency room without any type of health care, and we just need coverage. And I listened to all of these, and then I walked up to the podium because I could not take it. I could not listen to this. And I knew that it was going to be an unpopular statement. I knew it, but it had to be said. And the first thing that I said was, there are two things that government should not be doing. Number one is creating a nanny state, and number two is basing policy based on emotion. and I don't want to say this to sound harsh. I don't want to say this to sound heartless. I don't want to say this to sound like I just don't care. Everybody has a story. Every single human being on the face of the earth has a story, and a good story. And I love hearing the story, and I love learning about the story. They always say that if you want to understand somebody, walk in their shoes for a mile. I'm completely for that. I advocate for that. I understand it wholeheartedly, 100%. Yes, walk in someone's shoes for a day, walk in someone's shoes for a mile, and see what their life is like. Then you can truly understand why they think the way they think sometimes. Absolutely. Government should listen to these legislators, elected officials, governors, presidents, whoever. They should listen to them, but should never base policy on them. And here's why. Because everybody's story is different. Every single story on the face of the earth from every single human being, from the 3 trillion people that are on the face of the earth, everybody has their own story, and everybody's story is different. And the only way that you could take care of them is by pandering and by specifically mentioning them and creating legislation based on their individual story. And yes, some other story may be relatively close to theirs, so that way you can get maybe a small group of people that have the same like-minded interest because their all stories are exactly the same. But then what do you have to do? We've now gone from a very limited government to stay out of your way so your individual story can be crafted on you and your opportunities, to now having every single individual with their individual story being a new protected class. That is not the role of government. That is not the purpose of government. It is to listen to the stories to help get an idea. It's to listen to the individual to get a mindset, to get a generalization. It is not the purpose of government to craft legislation based on individual stories, because the next person next door to them, their neighbor down the street, their own siblings or their own family members or their own parents, they have a completely different story that will completely contradict it. There's someone who does not have health coverage, and they went to the emergency room because they're really sick, and now they're filing medical bankruptcy. It is a sad story. It is heartbreaking, but that is not an excuse to expand Medicaid. Because right next to them is an individual who does have health care, and they're trying to make it, and they're working, and they have a family of 4, and someone in their family is really, really sick, and now under Obamacare, they're getting less and less covered, and their pharmaceuticals aren't covered, so now they're paying $100, $200, $500 a month to be able to get those medications covered, and they have exams, and they have scans, and they have blood tests, and they're trying to make it with their coverage, and then Obamacare kicks in, and their coverage says, yeah, we're going to cover less of this, and you really have to pay a higher premium. So your premium every month just doubled, actually. And then, oh, by the way, you have to pay more of a deductible before we even start covering it. And then, oh, by the way, your specialist is going to be covered less anyways. So they're trying to make it while doing the system of what the system's supposed to do by allowing them to get coverage. They're following the rules every single day, and then they're in the same position by filing medical bankruptcy. 2 people at the same ends, but totally different roads on how to get there. Someone who didn't even try, didn't have coverage, couldn't get coverage, couldn't afford it, filing medical bankruptcy. Someone that's trying to follow the rules, trying to do it the right way, trying to take care of their family, trying to be responsible, couldn't make it because the system screwed them over, and they're filing medical bankruptcy. 2 totally different stories. Now, either one of those stories, is that an example to be able to file for us to expand a government program? No. What does that mean? That means that what do we have right now? 40,000, 50,000, what they say that's on backlog right now for CanCare trying to get signed up for it? We have too many people on the system already. That doesn't justify us to expand the program to have more people on backlog to try and get signed up for it. That means that what we need to do is we need to expand the private sector. We need to grow the economy. We need to get people back to work. We need to get paychecks in their hands. We need to not take their paycheck when they actually make that paycheck based on their tax rates, so that way they can afford private insurance, they can get good coverage, and then the very few that do fall in the cracks, the disabled, the elderly, and the others that for whatever reason are not able to get that, that's when we cover them. And then the system that's in place right now can take care of them. And the system that's here right now doesn't need to be expanded. It can even downsize a little bit, be a little more efficient, and then cover them and help them at a better rate than us trying to expand it, get more people on it, and make it a disaster. We need to think these things through. And I had to make that comment last night. And of course, for the first time in my life, I was booed largely, and I don't really care. I'm never going to see half the people again. And I did enjoy some of the facial expressions from some of the state legislators that were up there, from the smirks and the trying to hide their laughter because they thought it was comical, and some of them that just had the shocked expression. I saw one individual, I'm not going to name the name, but the shocked expression of the jaw dropping and then looking at their peers really quick and then trying to write down notes and not look me in the eye. And it was very entertaining to watch, because they didn't agree with me. And that's okay. But I had to make the point. I also reminded everybody that, I don't know if you're aware, but 4 days ago, your taxes went up in the state. Not only are you going to be owing taxes in April when you file because they passed a retroactive tax increase, but 4 days ago, they also raised your taxes again. So everybody that I just explained, that I just tried to create that scenario for, of the one that's trying to follow the rules, trying to work, trying to take care of your family, trying to go to the grocery store and pay the highest sales tax in the entire country on your food to eat, for the ones that are trying to actually pay off their car or trying to upgrade their car because it's about ready to break, every one of these individuals that's trying to pay insurance, that the premium skyrocketed to where they're paying $500, $600 a month that they can't afford, or maybe they just gave up and they can't afford it, period, and they're on Obamacare. But they're trying to follow the rules. They're trying to do what a responsible adult would do. It just made it harder for them. I spoke up there last night and I made the statement. I spoke up there as a father. I spoke up there as a husband. I spoke up there as someone who is a hard worker and who lives paycheck to paycheck, because I have a lot of debt and I need to get on the Dave Ramsey plan. Ha! But I live paycheck to paycheck. And how difficult does it make it for us when the government says we have programs that we deem necessary to be able to increase our spending on because these programs are really, really, really important, so we're just going to raise your taxes because you need to pay for it? And all of us that live paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, that are struggling every day trying to just survive and do the right thing and be the responsible adult. I get now why the young generation, the millennials, just want to not be the responsible adult and not consider themselves an adult, because it's really hard. But you know what? I do it because it's the right thing for the family. It's the right thing for us to do. But it makes it more difficult when the progressives, when the left-wingers, when the liberals come to you and say, we're just going to raise your taxes because we need to spend more money on public projects. We just need to spend more money on government social programs. We just need to spend more money on health care. We need to spend more money on education. We need to do all that, and you just got to pay for it, so you're just going to pay more taxes. But wait a second, my paycheck's really small already. You've already taken enough, and it's very difficult for me to actually pay my bills. Yeah, who cares? The government needs your money. Do your civic duty and just accept it and thank the government for taking your money every day. I'm not going to do that. I got booed last night, but we did have some conservatives in the crowd. We had conservatives in the legislature. I thank them. I pray for them. I hope that they stand their ground, that this can be the year that we change it. This can be the year that we reverse what we did last session. This can be the year that the Republican Party, regardless of being a Tea Party, Freedom Caucus conservative, or being a moderate Republican, we stand our ground. We stand up for Republican values. We stand up for lower taxes. We stand up for the private sector and for the family and for the business owner and for the farmer. And we stand up and we make their life easier by not stealing their money for inefficient and ineffective government programs.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It is a Thursday. Pre-Friday celebration has begun. We are just a few days away from the legislative session. We are also a few days away from the Chris Ann Hall Prospering a Liberty Tour. And we got to give away some more tickets. What do you say? I think it's going to be such a huge event. I am so excited about it. I'm going to be there listening to her speak. Everything that we just talked about, the role of the government, the spending, the ineffectiveness, allowing the private sector to do what it needs to do, the individual doing what it does best. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. That's what she teaches. The original intent of the Constitution. It's very simple. The original intent of the Constitution was supposed to be the government's there just to collect a little bit of tax and then they can do a little bit of a few things. The majority of the power is still held at the states, and then you as an individual still had the majority of the power to make your decision as an individual. That's not really the way we operate today because a lot of people don't understand that. I'm sure that the majority of the individuals advocating for the expansion of Medicaid yesterday at the Public Forum delegation would have maybe, hopefully, changed their mind if they understood the proper role of what government was and the responsibility they had as an individual. These are the types that maybe we can open the eyes. I don't like to just do the partisanship and just say, you're evil, you're terrible, so we're going to attack you, but we can actually try and open their eyes and educate. This is the way to do it. Chris Ann Hall's 2018 Prospering Liberty Tour. It's $11.95. It's not expensive at all. You need to get your tickets now. It's going to be a really fun event. It's going to be next Tuesday, beginning at 7 o'clock. Doors open at 5. It's at the Wichita Century 2 Convention Hall, and it's going to be Tuesday night. It's a perfect time for you to get off work, head out there. You got plenty of time to do so. $11.95. You can find it at wichitatix.com, wichitatix.com. I also have a pair of tickets that we'll give away right now if you want to call. Caller number 2, 721-8255-721-TALK. Before that, though, let's go right to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Oh, I guess we lost him there. That's all right. Give me a call back. Caller number 2. We'll do caller number 2, and we'll get you a pair of tickets to the Chris Ann Hall Prospering Liberty Tour at wichitatix.com. Again, wichitatix.com. We'll get you a pair of tickets for that, and you can go there next Tuesday. Enjoy, learn about the original intent of the Constitution. And I tell you what, she is one of the smartest individuals that I know, president of Liberty First University, constitutional lawyer, nationally syndicated radio host. She travels everywhere. She loves going to schools, teaching the youth. She loves going to events like this and teaching the general public, learning about the sovereignty of the states, learning about individual responsibility, and learning about the original intent of the Constitution. So caller number 2 right now, we'll get you a pair of those tickets. And you can go see Chris Ann Hall's Prospering Liberty Tour next Tuesday at Century 2 at the Convention Hall. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more to get to this hour. Your thoughts and calls as well. There's a lot of news happening very, very quickly, and we're going to try and stay on top of it. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
It's time for your daily dose of reason.
Are you insane?
I don't know. Just ignore him.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, KQAM. Congratulations to our winner on the tickets. We got some more coming for you tomorrow and on Monday. And actually, Geezer, who is one of the great listeners of the show, going to be joining us tomorrow talking about the event, as well as he's one of them organizing the Chris Ann Hall Prospering Liberty Tour coming up on Tuesday. So we'll talk with him tomorrow as well on some of those good old details. But we have some more tickets we'll give away on Friday and on Monday. 721-825-5721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones here, shall we? Good. Oh, I guess we lost one. Let's try another one, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, sir. It's Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
Doing good.
Good.
You know, the legislative sessions that
Yes.
they have periodically, you know, with all due respect to people who go there and attend, are just about the biggest waste of time of our legislators and our public officials I've seen in a long, long time. They're required to be there. They're required to listen to people. But the people that show up, that actually show up with a solution, or they show up with a legitimate issue, get drowned out by the people who show up whose biggest issue is, hey, I just lost 50 cents out in the vending machine. What are you going to do about it? You know, they just, the biggest takeaway that I've seen from attending any of these is two things. We are woefully pitiful in how the public understands economics, especially civic economics. And the second thing is that our public has been brainwashed, duped, and just absolutely abused with their lack of civics, what they know about how to run this country, what needs to be done.
Sure.
They think the role of government is to show up to make somebody do something you can't personally do because you're the government.
Well, sure. And everybody's got their own special interest. And even I myself, when I spoke last night and when I had my own special interest, that's what we do. We have our interests. We have our agenda that we want to promote, good, bad, or indifferent, depending on what side you're on. And here's the thing. I love the idea of a public forum because our legislators work for us, and we should be excited about a public forum in order to meet our local elected officials in our area in South Central Kansas and talk to them about the issues that we're concerned about, whether it's taxes, whether it's marijuana, whether it's education, whether it's whatever. We should be, whatever we need. And some organization showed up and said, hey, I represent this organization. This is what we've been doing. We'd like to work with you guys on something, X, Y, and Z. That's what it's for. And I want to see that. The problem is that exactly like what you mentioned, it has been taken over by activists who have an agenda, a specific agenda, and they show up in the Grove to overrun the entire thing rather than making it a forum for a balanced say from the entire community. They don't want that. They want to show up as the mass Grove. They want to protest. They want to show up in the large number and then try and show that that's what the majority of the community wants when it's not necessarily, but they showed up that night, so therefore they're the ones with the loudest voice and everybody needs to hear them. What we need to do is more of us, in my opinion, need to show up to something like that and counter that and start to educate, because when I spoke yesterday, it was all about the numbers. It was, look, potentially $2 billion in additional spending for Medicaid expansion. You want close to $600 million in additional education funding. How are we going to afford something like that when someone like me who's living paycheck to paycheck, and we already saw 2 tax increases? What more do you want from me? And let's get back to the basics of this. And they didn't like it, but if they hear it enough times, maybe something will trigger to say, wait a second. They'll either say, I don't care because I'm emotional and I want this to happen because I need to be taken care of because I'm a victim, or they'll say, oh, now I can finally start to understand why the opposition's upset and concerned about this issue.
One of the things that we're going to have to work with and work at is we have too many legislators who take a look at these kind of things that go on, and they do think that is the will of the people, what the masses want, and what we need to make sure that we're doing when we send our officials to the city, to the county, to the state, to the federal, is that we need to make sure that we're sending people who understand 2 things. Number one, the role of government is what they're there for, not the role of the mob.
Sure.
And the second thing is that we're not sending them there to compromise. I don't know where. No, I do know where. It's in the socialist brainwashing that's been going on. The idea that politics is about compromise. It's not. You have your set of morals. You have your beliefs. You show up at the primary. You state your position. And if you get enough people who agree with you, you get the job.
Exactly.
Your job isn't to try and satisfy every person in your district.
And you know what? You bring that really nicely, because that is the difference right there. That is the difference between a republic form of government, which we have, and a democracy. The republic, someone runs and says, this is the ideas that I have. These are my values. This is my stance. This is my platform. And this is what I believe in. And if you believe in me, then vote for me. And if a majority of the people in that district end up voting for you, that means they believe in your ideals because they trust you to go up and fight for those specific values in that elected seat. A democracy It doesn't matter who you have in there. You have any Joe Schmo go up and then just say, okay, what do you want me to do? And then whoever shows up by the mob-like mentality with the most amount of people that votes on it and says support it this way, then they just go with the breeze that way, and it's all run by the mob and by the majority, and that's when you open it up to shenanigans and people being paid off and misinformation being out there. There's a vast difference, which is why democracy is a dangerous, dangerous thing, and we don't have that. We have a republic because they're not supposed to compromise their values. They got elected to represent those values and fight for them, and that's why the public forums are good, and they need to hear them, but they also, as you mentioned, don't need to compromise on what they actually stand for and believe in.
And that's part of the problem is what we saw last night was too many people who are demanding their role in a democracy
right.
and not understanding that from our lack of civics, we don't have a democracy.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I think we saw a few legislators who are going to be going back, who think that the role of their job is to compromise, is to go ahead and say, well, I kind of said that was what I was for, but, I want to keep my seat, so I'm going to go ahead and be wiffly-waffly on these things. Or, that big mob right there, that's a lot of votes, and they want this, so to keep my seat, I'm going to expand government beyond what its role should be.
Sure.
We need to
it really makes sense.
Their jobs.
Well, sure, and it really makes sense on why now so many people are trying to change the discussion by educating the youth, by teaching them that we have a democracy, when elected officials knowingly know that we don't have a democracy, but they try and say that we're trying to preserve our democracy. We had the progressive movement saying that like Our Revolution and Democracy Now! And some of these other organizations that are trying to preach quote-unquote democracy, they're trying to change that so that way people don't have values and they don't have the platforms and they don't stand firm on something and hope that people rally around them, but they want people to go up and say, listen to the mob, listen to the activists that are showing up and yelling and screaming and protesting and advocating for you to do this, because apparently that should be the majority of the community then, and then you must support them because that's who actually showed up. They're trying to change even the basic thought process of politics today by saying that we're no longer in a representative republic, but we're in a democracy, and listen to the mob who's yelling the loudest.
Listen to the mob, listen, and otherwise you'll be drug out in front of the court of social justice. And the other great fallacy is when you listen to, and this discussion's already started, well, if we're going to have tax cuts, we have to find some way to pay for them. No, if you're going to have tax cuts, I don't know about anyone else's house. If we have cuts, it means we need to get rid of some things. We don't find ways to pay for them by, well, let's go steal packages off somebody's porch. Let's go take somebody else's stuff. No, the way you get a cut is you cut. Right.
I agree.
And as long as we've got legislators who can't get that concept, that they think that well, if we're going to give a tax cut, we've got to go raise money somewhere else. No, that's that. And the frustration I get off of these events like we had last night is just more than a person can bear. It really emphasizes the fact that Richard Dreyfuss is right. He's got. It's simple. It goes back to the very basic equation, the RichardDreyfussProject.org. All you got to do is go there and understand one simple thing. The basics of our government, the Constitution, and Chris Ann Hall will tell you this, the Constitution is the owner's manual. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have a public that understands that, how are we going to run the country?
There it is. Drew, I appreciate the call very much. You bring up some really great points. It's a really interesting discussion to understand the difference in the roles of government, the difference in ideology, and what's being taught today. And you're right, with Chris and so many other constitutional experts that talk about the constitutional republic that we have, the form of government that we have that's not a democracy. So when we go to a public forum like that last night, I love the idea of the public forum. I love the idea of people expressing their concerns because, they should listen. Our elected officials should listen to us. But at the same time, they should not change their values and their morals based on the mob that shows up in groves. And what I saw last night was the mob showing up in groves with their signs picketing outside beforehand, saying expand Medicaid, and then showing up and overrunning it. Out of the 30 people that spoke, 27 of them were there to talk about the expansion of Medicaid. You can either show up in groves to counter that, and then you have a big war on your hands, or like many people do, like Drew just mentioned, I don't like it, and I'm just not going to show up. because that's not helpful. It's not purposeful. We need to get the dialogue out. We need to get the education out on what we do, how our system of government runs, what the necessity and what the role of government should be, and what our responsibility is as an individual to not only look at the populist hipster, hey, cool, look at how trendy they are when they run for office, but what their voting record is, what they stand for, what they're going to believe in, and for us to trust them to represent us. It's about trust. And it's about that hard work. Are they going to do the job that they promised to do when they were running for office? That's really what it comes down to. As a voter, breaking it down to the layman's terms for the Joe Schmo like you and I that's not necessarily involved in heavy politics or in the system, but we're just the ones voting for them. That's what it comes down to. Will they do the job they promise? And will they stand for the values that they're preaching on the campaign trail? Because I like those ideals, so I'm going to vote for them. Or I don't like those ideals, so I'm not going to vote for them. But when they get into office, I expect them to do that, to vote for and support and advocate for what they said they were going to on the campaign trail, because that's who they are. That's their character. That's their principle. That's their platform. And that's what we're going to base our judgment on. And it's our due diligence to figure that out and research it enough to understand whether they're lying or they're manipulating or whether they're truly honest about it. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
It's a little scary, ain't it? Just one small little tweak in the education, one small little tweak in the general understanding of how we actually do things can have such a devastating effect. Because now you have people saying, you're not listening to us. You need to listen to the large crowd of people protesting. So wait a second, are you the ones that have the majority that voted them into office? Well, no. Okay, then be quiet. Voice your concern, but don't get angry when you don't always get what you want. I know it's a really tough thing. 721-8255-721-TALK. Wrapping up hour number 2. State Representative John Whitmer going to be joining in the third hour as we talk about the delegation event from last night. Also, what's to come next week with the legislative session. Should be a lot of fun. I do want to shift gears just for a second, though, wrapping up this hour, because I saw this story and I started laughing out loud. I usually don't burst out laughing for no reason, but last night when I saw this, I burst out laughing and I couldn't stop. I don't know if you're aware or not, but Oregon recently, for the beginning of the year, changed it to where now you have to pump your own gas in the state. Really the last state that had people pumping the gas for you. I mean, it's still an option. I remember that as a kid in the small town in Ohio. They had the people that would pump your gas for you. You could do it yourself if you wanted to, but they had the option of that. And riding around with my grandparents, they would always do that and tip the kid. And it was a young kid just trying to start off and do their thing, which was fine. But it was apparently nobody did it in Oregon. And now they're forced to pump their own gas in Oregon, and they're panicking. I've never seen this before. I've never seen something like this before. They're panicking of the fact that they have to pump their own gas. All over social media in Oregon. Here it is. I lived in this state all my life, and I refuse to pump my own gas. I had to do it once in California while visiting my brother, and I almost died doing it. This is a service only qualified people should perform. I will literally park at the pump and wait until someone pumps my gas. I can't even. We got to play. Can we play the sound effects, please? We got to play the sound effects here. Come on. If you can't pump your own gas, here's your sign. If you're too unable to pump your own gas at the pump because you're cold, because you don't know how to do it, we have serious problems. I've lived in the state all my life, and I refused to pump it. I almost died. I can't even. Here's another one. I don't want to pump my own gas. I hate the smell of it and having to get out in the winter in a skirt. No way. So don't wear a skirt or wear a coat. Oh, the struggle is weird. The real. The struggles. The first world struggles, I tell you. Here's another one. Apparently, most people in Oregon assume that in order to pump gas, you must first remove all people from the vehicle and stand in the open while people attack you from all angles while being sprayed with gas. No, disabled, seniors, people with young children in the car need help, not to mention getting out of your car With transients all around and not feeling safe, this is a very bad idea. Yeah, the struggle is real. Your kid's going to be in the car. You're going to be beside the car, pump the gas. You're disabled. The struggle is real, I tell you. I did not realize this was this big of an issue until it blew up on social media. Not a good idea. There's a lot of reasons to have attending help. One is they need a job. Two, many people are not capable of knowing how to pump gas and the hazards of not doing it correctly. Besides, I don't want to go to work smelling of gas when I get it on my hands and clothes. Very bad idea. If you're trying to pump your car full of gas and you have gas all over your hands and clothes, I think you're doing it wrong. Just a word if you had gas all over your hands and clothes after you pump gas in your car, I think you're doing it wrong. Here's another one for you. Yuck. Pumping gas and fuel in the freezing temperatures and handling a nasty old fuel nozzle that 50 other people have touched that day. No, thank you. It's nice not to have to pump your own fuel. Yeah, it's nice. Ain't it nice? But the fact that, I don't even know how to respond to this. Here's another one. I'm in Colorado where we're forced to pump our own gas. Because I'm worried about my children being left in the car while I stand outside my skirt, I just pay the individuals to pump it for me. This way we're all safe and the transients are distracted from bothering those who are pumping their own gas. Well, you are from Colorado. I can tell how that's very hard, usually when the doobie's been involved in it to some way, shape, or form. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. There you go. You want to talk about entitlement and people who just have a hard time doing it? Welcome to Oregon, where you don't know how to pump your own gas. Don't touch the green one unless you have the special kind of fuel. Just saying. Hour number 3, The Voice Reason, coming up.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Thursday. It's a pre-Friday celebration, enjoying it because it's the last short week that we get to enjoy from the holiday on Monday. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is the week to try and it's been the crazy week trying to get everything ready for the end of the fourth quarter, wrapping it up, getting ready for the first quarter, getting ready for the brand new year, and then next week we can start off on our regular routine again. So this one's been a little nuts, and I'm glad it's a little short, so that way we can work hard to rest hard this weekend. Welcome into it. 721-825-5721 Talk. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Social media is always open to shoot me a message on Facebook, on KQAM, The Voice of Reason, Twitter at Hoosier Reason, and the Facebook Live feed that's always rolling as well. And I'm really excited for everybody jumping on there. Do really, really appreciate that. Let's get to our guest, as he was at the South Central Kansas Delegation Public Forum last night, as I was getting ready for the legislative session that starts on Monday. It's coming up quicker than what we'd probably like it to be. State Representative John Whitmer. And John, I have to say, I've never felt like Donald Trump last night, to where you don't necessarily gauge your public State of the State or State of the Union address on the number of applauses, but the number of boos you get throughout your speech.
Yes, you were very popular last night, judging by the boos.
Judging by the boos. I've never had 60 people boo me at the same time before. That was fantastic.
Well, I got to tell you, I sat through, and it is 90 minutes of excruciating. It helps teach you patience and tolerance. I will put it that way. But I sat through the first hour or so, and many of my Democrat colleagues applauded as there were repeated pleadings for Medicaid expansion and legalized marijuana and
sure.
The other liberal agenda, and there was lots of applause from the Democrats. But at least as you walked away, it gave me the first opportunity of the night to applaud. So I did appreciate that.
Well, at least we can lighten it up a little bit.
And I got some nasty looks for doing it.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, at least we can lighten up the mood a little bit. You know, I don't care that they booed. I thought it was kind of entertaining, but it is interesting how they did their little march outside of the courthouse beforehand with their signs to expand Medicaid. That was the movement. And then out of the 30 people that spoke, it was 27 of them that said, hey, we need to expand Medicaid because that was the agenda. And as you mentioned, I mean, the Democrats, they were just eating it up last night.
Yeah, well, this is why I made sure to send you the invitation to that, is because, and I've tried to explain, we look, I encourage all of my colleagues to go to that event, even though we know that none of our constituents generally attend, and even if they attend, few of our voters will be there.
Mm-hmm.
It is really, in essence, what that event is it's a Democrat forum.
Sure.
There are not a whole, but it's always good to make sure that you're at least there. That, you know, the biggest complaint that I've heard is my state rep is never available. My state rep doesn't come out. My state rep doesn't make themselves available, which is why I make sure to return every phone call and every email and attend those things, so that at least they can't say he never responds. They may not like my response, but at least I'm there.
You're there,
and
exactly.
So, right. So at least I encourage my colleagues to go, and there were a fair amount of Republicans who attended last night, even though we know that, I mean, like you said, the number one issue was Medicaid expansion. I keep a little tally sheet as we go, and you know, the second one was, quote, adequately fund our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one was no private prisons. You know, the fourth one was legalized recreational marijuana. And, of course, none of the Republicans up there are going to vote for that. And I wanted to ask every one of these people how you want to pay for these things.
Well, and that's why I tried to throw the numbers out there. And I got to say, one of these senators, I'm not going to mention her name, but her jaw never left the floor the 2 minutes that I was up there, and she kept looking at her colleagues and looking down and looking at me with these bug eyes, because I mean, I only had 2 minutes and I knew nobody else was going to do this, but the chance that Medicaid expansion could potentially be $2 billion, the fact that we're looking at another $600 million, and I wanted to remind that not only are we going to be owing taxes in April, but 4 days ago now, our tax rate went up again. How much more do you want from me? And I don't know what their thoughts were at that time, but somebody had to say it.
Well, and someone asked me after. I usually wait around after in case anyone wants to come up and speak. And a few did come up to me after, and they asked why I applauded you. And I told them, I was honest with them, and I said, well, because I thought it was important that at least somebody give a counterpoint to everything else that we had heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, here's a perfect example. I said, you're asking us to expand Medicaid under Obamacare, yet the federal government just struck down the central component to funding Obamacare, which is the individual mandate.
Right.
So there is no longer a federal requirement that funds Obamacare. So how would we even remotely, logically, in any logical sense, sign up this state to join Obamacare when now it has lost the fundamental underpinning at the federal level?
Mm-hmm.
That would be absolutely insane for us to join a program that now has lost the way to pay for itself.
Exactly. And
she had no answer to that.
No answer. And even if we do get federal funding coming in to aid that, it's not going to be enough. The fact that they're starting to repeal Obamacare, like you mentioned, at the federal level, we're going to get less of that, which means more of the burden is going to be put on us. And the only way to fund that is to raise our taxes again, which I don't know how. Well, I take that back. There were a couple people there yesterday that did say, raise my taxes. Please just do it and just make it happen. I guess there is that. And I don't want it to be about me. I don't really care about me. Someone had to say it, and I enjoyed doing that to ruffle the feathers. But it was information that was very interesting to listen to with everybody else, which, again, the comment that I had to make was don't base policy on emotion, because we can hear every day of think of the children with education, think of the disabled person, think of the homeless person or the person without a job or anything. Think of them when you're looking at trying to expand Medicaid because they need your help. Everybody's got a story, and if you look at everybody's individual story, we're going to be now a protected class just for having a sneeze one day. Sure,
but many of us are thinking of the children when we're aghast at the fact that the Supreme Court is threatening to close schools.
Sure.
I mean, how can you out of one side of your mouth say think of the children, and at the other side of your mouth threaten to shut down the schools? Children have a right to an education, but if you don't give us more money, we're going to close schools and take away their right to an education?
Yes.
There's no logic there. And that's one of the biggest frustrations that we have. It was interesting. You made that comment about the person who said raise my taxes. Because I'm outgoing vice chair of the delegation, I sat there on the front row with all the Democrats. And when they made that request to raise my taxes, all the Democrats around me kind of leaned over to each other and were like, yeah, well, that's a lot easier said than done. And what people don't realize is even the Democrats right now are not willing to raise taxes because they know they're up for re-election.
That's funny. That's interesting to hear. I do have to ask, because this one came out of left field, and I don't know where it came from. Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit, but I didn't realize that there were stressful work hazards at a call center, and that was something that someone was concerned about. What was that about?
It's ironic because my wife actually worked in call centers for upwards of 15, 18 years, and it is an incredibly stress-filled environment.
Well, sure.
However, I have no idea how we would create legislation to regulate stress at the work. But that, as I was thinking about it, I sat there going, I agree. That's why she was glad to get out and why we started a small business. But on the flip side, it's another example of how many in the left, many Democrats, believe that the government is the solution to everything.
Well,
and
maybe the government should create. No, exactly. Well, maybe you should just create legislation to say that for an hour a day, the call center should shut down. They have their nighttime. They turn off the lights. They have their de-stress moment where they play some music and light some candles, and then they can pick up their call center again. Maybe that's what they need to de-stress.
Or they could take the example from KU and they could bring in stress animals and, that kind of, they could have petting horses and petting dogs and things like that.
Some adult coloring books.
That.
Yeah.
And we should legislate that. Yeah.
There we go. We should make that happen. That's the one that threw a curveball to me, so that I had to bring that one up. I wasn't sure. It was a fun event last night. It wasn't about me, but it was fun to, throw the wrench in the system and hear the gasps and see that. I will never forget that reaction from one of the state senators that just didn't know how to respond to what I was saying. I will never get that image out of my mind. I thought it was quite entertaining, and I couldn't stop looking away, so she probably got a little agitated by me staring at her the whole time, too. But coming up on Monday, the kickoff of the legislative session, the State of the State address by Governor Sam Brownback is on Tuesday next week. Things are starting to move very quickly. What do you anticipate to happen the first couple of days of the session?
Nothing.
Nothing. All right.
I'm giving you the...
Fantastic.
I'm giving you the honest truth. What typically happens this first week is nothing, and my guess is we will be off on Friday. It's hurry up and wait time. A lot of bills will get introduced. Committees will start that process. I know I've got 3 or 4 bills that I'm introducing. Many have already been pre-introduced over the break. People will start getting plans together for informational hearings and whatnot, but the system really doesn't get going until the second week.
Sure.
Just because you do interrupt everything with the State of the State on Tuesday.
Sure.
Are they going to just getting back?
Are they going to pre-tape the response to that from the Democrat side again this year?
I'm sure, probably. I don't know who's giving it. I wouldn't be surprised if Laura Kelly may be the one giving it, just because she's been tapped. That's an interesting story there too, because Kathleen Sebelius is the one who is backing her.
Sure.
Which must just get right. I mean, it must really bother Jim Ward that Kathleen Sebelius is supporting, an opponent for him in the primary. But I know it's going to be busy, but I don't really see any groundbreaking, earth-shattering legislation or anything coming out this week, because this is the start. Everything gears up. You have new members that are coming in that'll be sworn in this week. So there's that. There've been some committee reassignments because of those new members coming in. So this week is really just sort of a ramp up as committees get started, as that process gets started, and bills get introduced. Well, I think you really start to see things kick off next week. Yeah, I could be wrong. I don't know. They're definitely on an accelerated timeline, that's for sure. I'm not in leadership, so I'm not in that loop.
Sure. Well, it almost sounds like it's almost like the first date or the new sparring partner, where you need a few days just kind of feel it out and kind of set the tone on who's gonna do what and what's gonna be released and what's going to be promoted throughout the session. So that'll be kind of interesting to see. Other than the major issues, obviously, with the education funding that we're looking at, with the Medicaid expansion, that obviously is a big issue for 50 people around here in the Wichita area. Other than that, what other major issues do you see? I mean, they talked about the private prisons last night. Do you think there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be some more bills on maybe like the agricultural hemp growing that I am in support of with the agricultural hemp side of it. But
sure,
I mean, some of that stuff, is that going to be a big talking point this year?
Well, the House passed an industrial hemp bill last year, and it died in the Senate. So I think we'd like to see that get through. That's a neat opportunity for farmers. So I supported the industrial hemp bill.
Sure.
I'm not going to support recreational marijuana, but I support industrial hemp. I think, we obviously have some other budgetary issues that we've got to address, corrections, mental health. There's areas that need, which is why I get so frustrated with the demands from the education establishment for more money, when every other area of the budget has been, there are areas that need funding as well, and yet we have one area that is suing, and it just, that frustration is there. And I think you've seen it as Vice Chair of Corrections. I see it all the time. The other thing I noticed, last night we had all those people talking about privatizing prisons, but they only have that one part of it. It's, they don't realize, they're not informed enough, I don't think, to realize the state will still be running that prison. It'll be state corrections employees running the prison. It'll be the Department of Corrections overseeing the prison. It's not like we're outsourcing that prison in the proposal.
Right.
It's just we're outsourcing the construction of the prison. But it'll still be DOC, but that's not their mindset, and they don't want to hear the reality. It's like if you have a Medicaid expansion talk with them, they don't want to hear the truth.
Well, come on. I mean, they want their public union employees to be able to construct it at the same time, so that way it's built none other than straight up public government funded money. We don't even need to outsource the construction of it, baby. Let's do this.
Right. And they don't want to hear anything that contradicts their narrative. And
sure.
That's, So, but I think you'll see a lot of those other issues that are going to come up. I'm sure that we will have a discussion. I would be surprised on something to do with campus carry. I've heard that from the other side, that they want to look at that and try and repeal that.
Sure.
So,
joy. Looks forward to that one, too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They never end.
I don't think that'll go anywhere.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, during an election year, I think they'd be very careful on going back to their constituents, even in a blue district with a Democrat, and say, yeah, I voted to try and take away guns during an election. Please revote for me and reelect me. So I think they'd be very cautious on that one. At least I would hope so. But I could be wrong, because they're still advocating for more taxes, too, so who knows what's going to happen. State Representative John Whitmer, it's the legislative session 2018 starting up next week. It's great to talk to you, my friend. It was a lot of fun last night. I'm glad that we shook up the system just a little bit, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Well, you were popular. You should show up more often.
I think I might. I have some fans or haters or something. It's okay. John, we'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. State Representative John Whitmer right there. Taking a break. Your phone calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
voice of reason. Went a little long in that last segment. That's all right. Appreciate State Representative John Whitmer swinging by. The legislative session 2018 kicking underway in just a few days. Can you believe it? The State of the State address happening on Tuesday next week. We'll talk about that when we come back a little bit. Get your thoughts. What do you anticipate to see? What do you want to hear versus what do you think you'll hear during the State of the State address on Tuesday? Also, there's some news, some follow-up news from an old story that I think we need to address because it really, we called it. We were right. And now it's very dangerous. Unless this kind of news doesn't get out, it's very dangerous for the upcoming elections on what could potentially be with the opposition and how they go about their campaign tactics. That and more. Your phone calls. It's open lines to you. Wrapping up the show today. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason here on KQAM.
You a Hoosierholic?
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Call in now at 721-8255. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Let's make it happen. What do you say? Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. It's been a fun one. Appreciate you all hanging out with us today on a pre-Friday celebration. It's the Friday Eve. Let's enjoy it as such, shall we? 721-8255, 721-TALK. If you want to join in, social media is open to you on the Facebook Live feed, KQAM page, the Voice of Reason page, the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. You can also email me, by the way, if you want to send me articles, links. People do that all the time. I love it. Andy, A-N-D-Y, Andy at KQAMradio.com. You can send me an email on your thoughts of the show, stories that you want me to cover, concerns that you have. Even if you disagree with me, I love it, and you can always do that. Governor Sam Brownback speaking and confirming that he's going to be speaking at the State of the State address on Tuesday next week. The question is, when did that ever change? When did that ever change? Now, if he had taken the nomination to the to Ambassador at Large for International Freedom, then he wouldn't, obviously, because he would have stepped down. The fact that he's still governor means that he'd still be speaking at the State of the State address. I don't understand where the confusion's coming from here. The Democrats and the progressives have been adamant in the media, on social media, about the fact that, well, it's very difficult because we have to make two different phone calls to either his office or Lieutenant Governor Collier's office to see which side is actually going to handle our issues. Because they've been splitting some of the duties and they've been kind of doing it hand in hand. I would say, being a governor and a lieutenant governor, you're really supposed to be doing that anyways to some degree, but they're doing it a little more so, preparing for when Governor Brownback steps up and goes to the next level and Lieutenant Governor Collier takes over. He's familiar with it. He knows how to jump. He knows how to hit the ground running. He knows what he's doing because he's already taken over some of the duties. So first off, we have to call two different offices. Give me a break. If you don't know how to pick up the phone and call two different offices, then again, you're no different than someone who doesn't know how to pump their own gas in Oregon. That's a little absurd. Second off, when did it ever change that Governor Brownback was going to not give the State of the State if he had not been confirmed yet? Well, he's got to start back at ground zero. I saw the story about a week or two ago about, that he's got to start the process all over again and how they just don't like Governor Brownback, just like we don't like him, and they don't want him either, so he's got to start it all over, and he's an unpopular guy, and D.C. didn't even like him. I would like to remind that President Trump's picks for different agencies and ambassadors and different representation and different areas, Congress, with the Democrats being able to stop a lot of these, having such a large number of Democrats in the Senate who confirmed these nominations, a large part of the Democrats have just stopped them just for the sake of stalling them. They've not been able to get on board with nominating a lot of these. They've not been able to ram them through. They've not been able to just get them going. So you're obstructing the administration from doing the transition and then criticizing the administration for not being smooth on its transition and nominating the people to get them in there and do their jobs. You're blocking it and then criticizing him for not getting the job done. You have not. This is from the LA Times, a story that came out on December 31st, just last weekend. The Senate, with the Democrats doing their obstruction, have only approved 36% of Trump's nominees. Now, granted, the President Trump has not necessarily picked as many individuals and nominated them as many as what they would like or what Barack Obama had. But at this point in time, at this time in the system, Donald Trump only has 36% of his nominees actually confirmed, while this time during Barack Obama's administration, 59% have been confirmed. And let's run the numbers for the slower end of the spectrum here that may be on the progressive side. Let's run the numbers. Donald Trump has less nominees because he hasn't nominated nearly as many people yet. Less nominees with a less percentage of them still getting approved by the Senate. Barack Obama had more nominees by this time and had 60% of his confirmations done. Tell me who's in the wrong here. Is it President Trump because he hasn't done his job and nominated them properly? Or is it because the Senate and the Democrats are blocking and obstructing them and won't let his nominees go through? I wonder what the situation is. So, is it Governor Brownback's fault? No. It's the fact that the Senate won't get on board and actually get these things done because they thought it was a really, 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 really successful year to nominate a Supreme Court justice and get him into office and to vote on a tax bill last minute the last weekend before the holiday. The two duties, one in April or May, whenever that was, and then one right before the Christmas holiday for the end of the year. That's a successful year. Man, we really worked. That was a sweat. We need a good vacation. We may have to come in late for the next session in 2018 because that was really, really tough. I mean, that just put us in overtime. We had to stay late. We had to work different hours. We actually had to show up to our committee hearings. It's a really tough thing. So the Democrats obviously like to pick on the low-hanging fruit, attack Governor Brownback. Oh, he's unpopular in Washington, D.C., not getting nominated, got to start the process all over. We're stuck with him for so much longer, but at the same time, we hate him that he's moving on and deserting us and whatever else they want to say when it's not even his fault. It's the Democrats' fault, like usual, obstructing what the Republicans are doing and then blaming the Republicans for not actually getting it done. But spokeswoman Rachel Whitton, who we always thank her for always getting us guests on the show from the administration, from the office up there and talking to different people. Her comment came out just a couple of days ago. The governor was always going to deliver the state of the state. And since the governor didn't get confirmed, that means he's going to deliver it. Not a big shocker, right? There's really no story here. I don't know why the media, first off, had to criticize and say, why are we separating the duties and trying to share the duties between the two governor and lieutenant governor? And now, Governor Brownback, is he really going to be given? They created the question. It should have been common sense. Yeah, Governor Brownback's still in office. He's going to give the State of the State address. But the Democrats asked, the media asked it, who's going to give it because he's still governor, but Lieutenant Governor Collier's actually taken some duties? To me, that's a little bit of a stupid question. But to the media and to the progressives, apparently not. So then they create the issue by asking the question. It gets confirmed that, Governor Brownback's giving it. Why wouldn't he give it? He's still governor. Oh, then the big news story. Governor Brownback still gives State of the State address. This is the lunacy that we live in. We create non-issues and make them an issue because we have nothing better to do. As you know, on this show, we like to talk about issues and policy and philosophy and the Constitution, and we love to debate, and we love to dialogue, and we love to do all these things, and then we see these non-issues just because of that fact. Donald Trump did tweet a while ago, back in June, Dems are taking forever to approve my people, including ambassadors, and nothing but obstructionists want approvals. Being frustrated, obviously. He had Trump so far, as of, again, December, had nominated close to 110 out of the 500 nominees that he needed to do. Barack Obama at this point was close to like his 400. But again, 100 nominees, 110 nominees, 30% approval and confirmation. Barack Obama, 400 nominees, 60% approval. I think we know who the real obstructionists are, as they are with the actual Democrats. The other story that I do want to get to shift gears just a little bit, and as we mentioned, we're concerned about the way the campaigns and the campaign tactics on the campaign trail are going to look like. And after the special election in Alabama with the Roy Moore election and the sexual harassment case, and you're just a pedophile now, so no one should listen to you. And with him losing, we were concerned of the fact that they were going to use non-political arguments on the campaign trail to personally attack candidates. Hopefully not within our own party, but you never know. But primarily from Democrats attacking Republicans in that sense. Republicans like to fight on ideas. Democrats like to fight on personality and the person. And it's unfortunate. It breaks my heart, but that's the way politics is, because sometimes it gets very, very dirty. And I'm concerned that the upcoming either midterm elections, Congressman Ron Estes, or some of our state legislators, or the Secretary of State, or who I guess not Secretary of State because we have 3 Republicans running for that one, but with the other races, the gubernatorial race, how many of them are going to be using personal attacks and false accusations to taint the reputation of that individual? I see it coming. I know it's going to happen. I see it coming. And even in our home state, I wonder when it's going to happen. I wonder who's going to throw that first one, that first spitball, and see which one it lands on. I'm very curious to see. But according to The Hill, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but according to The Hill, they report that after the special election in Alabama, Roy Moore took a polygraph test. Did anybody talk about this? This came out the 28th of December. After the election, Roy Moore took a polygraph test after the election and confirmed, according to the results of the polygraph, that the accusations on sexual harassment and going after young girls, the 14-year-old girl and all the other ones that accused him, were false. Were not true. Now, polygraph tests can also be manipulated. It's very difficult to do so. And whether the story is actually legit or not, I would assume it's relatively legit by The Hill reporting on it before the end of the year. Who's talking about it? Who's talking about the fact that the reason a Democrat won in a red state that was formerly held by now the Attorney General and was being campaigned on by a conservative Republican that holds Christian moral values, that's a constitutionalist, that is a judge that was on the Supreme Court twice in the state of Alabama, that was running for the Senate seat, that was falsely accused by sexual allegations? Who's talking about the fact that the Democrats lied about it? These women came out and lied about it. And according to a polygraph, at least, that it's a false accusation. Where's the story? Where is the apology from the women? Where's the apology from the Democrats who use this for the political platform? Where's the apology from the general public that completely destroyed Roy Moore's reputation, completely destroyed any type of political future for him, destroyed anything about him personally, because now he's known as the rapist, as the pedophile, as the sexual harasser, and as someone who's never going to hold public office ever again. That's how dangerous these accusations are. And if it's true that the polygraph test came back as false, which is very difficult to fake, but I guess you could if you're completely mental, I guess. Why is no one talking about this? Why is no one shutting it down and creating a national discussion on sexual harassment accusations and saying, if you're going to accuse, you better have evidence, you better make darn sure that it actually happened, and you better only do it if it's legit, because if it is legit, we need to address it seriously. If it's not legit, then you've destroyed someone's life just for your own gain. Does that sound like anybody or any ideology? Oh, yeah, progressive. Does that sound like anybody else we know of? Oh, yeah. I'm waiting for it to happen in the state of Kansas, and the fact that the biggest one that really shifted that quote-unquote momentum the Democrats have now, because they can just stay away from the politics, accuse their contender or their opponent of something personal like that, damage their reputation, then win an election. If they continue to do that nationally, which they're going to, they're going to, but the one that they hype up as that example and it came out to be false, like everything else they try and claim that's false, then we're going to have some issues. Because the Democrats have the leverage. All they got to do is name call you, and they win an election. Their agenda wins on non-agenda campaigns. That's not what politics is about. That's not what elections are about. That's not the way we're supposed to run a government. But that's the populist movement that we've seen today. And I'm not talking about the Donald Trump populist movement. I'm talking about the populist movement to say whatever you can, the reality TV show, the Kim Kardashian style. If we say something loud enough and long enough, then people will begin to believe it, regardless of what the opposition actually says about it. Don't have the dialogue. Don't have the debate. Don't have the discussion. Name call, dismiss, categorize, identify, and move on. That's the philosophy of the progressives. But Roy Moore, according to The Hill, Roy Moore says he took polygraph after election and confirmed accusations were false. His campaign came out on Wednesday before the holidays and said in a reliable Republican state, Moore's campaign became rocked by multiple allegations. One woman said she was 14, yada, yada, yada. And here's the statement from although provided the complaint in the affidavit for Judge Roy Moore, stating that his successfully completed a polygraph test confirming the representation of misconduct made against him during the campaign are completely false, according to his campaign. Absolutely 100% false. Will there be an apology from every Democrat that campaigned calling him a pedophile in that last election? I'm not going to hold my breath on it. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. I guess I didn't even answer my own question, and if you want to answer, you're more than welcome to do so at 721-8255, 721-TALK. For the last few minutes of the show, what do we want to see? What do we expect to see with the State of the State address by Governor Sam Brownback on Tuesday next week? We'll have the audio recap for you on Wednesday if you cannot hear it on Tuesday. It's going to be kind of a big deal. A lot of people paying attention to it, seeing what Governor Brownback's going to say. I would say, just like what he said last year, was the state of the state is strong, but is beginning to become weak again. I would say that it is strong, but it has the potential of weakening again after the major tax increases that we did, the largest tax increase in state history. If we continue to go down that road, we are going to get ourselves into trouble again. The economy is not going to grow. The private sector is not going to flourish. The unemployment rate is going to skyrocket. The businesses are not going to grow. In fact, the businesses may go the opposite direction. Small business, you going to work right now or running your shop that's probably already open, you're going to be having a hard time continuously wanting to expand or reinvest in your business or even keep your doors open, for crying out loud. I wish that he would actually just kind of take this one as tongue-in-cheek and just walk in and say, you know what? Your agenda is to reverse everything that I've been trying to do for the last 8 years. It's unfortunate because I've only looked out for the best interest of the state. You may agree with me. You may not like me. And yeah, you know what? I may not be perfect and have made the best decisions all the time. But at the same time, I've tried to do what the best is for my state, for our state. And you want to reverse everything I'm doing? I'm going home heck with you guys. Mic drop, walk out. That would be outstanding to watch. Now, he's too nice of a guy to do that, but that's honestly what I would love to see. If he did that, I would applaud him because he deserves to. He has gotten more flack than I think anybody else in politics for a long time. Now, Donald Trump probably beats him on that. Some of the other Republicans may beat him on that to some degree, but at the same time, he's right up there with them. The nonstop, absolute, seeing red hatred that Democrats and progressives have for Sam Brownback in this state is heartbreaking and upsetting all at the same time. I don't always agree with everything he does. I know a lot of Republicans don't even care for what he does at times. That's okay. But we don't hate him with that seeing red, fury in our eyes, passion to despise everything that he stands for. And that's what the Democrats and the progressives have done, and I feel really bad for him. I hope that he gets this ambassadorship very soon. I hope that he can get back up there and they can restart the process. They can get him to D.C. because he does not deserve it anymore. He sacrificed a lot in this state, and we have to congratulate him for that. Even though we may not agree with everything he's done, he has done what he could. And for that, I applaud him, and I thank him for that. And for the Democrats, you know, they're not going to listen to him. Every Democrat, every moderate Republican, every individual in the legislature that just reversed his tax plan last session, no matter what he says in that State of the State on Tuesday, it's going to fall on deaf ears, and all they're doing is counting down the days until he's gone. They can reverse the rest of his agenda. They can stop Lieutenant Governor Collier from stepping in, and they hope for a Democrat governor next year or the end of this year. That's their goal. That's what they're looking for. I hope he just uses it tongue-in-cheek. He does what he needs to for the public, and then he gives them a sarcastic response and walks out the door. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.